This video is sponsored by Tokyo Treat. So coming off the previous chapter, we saw Sukuna getting hit with the Jacob's Ladder curse technique for a second time, only to survive it yet again. And his counter to that was hitting Akotu and Yuji and Rika with the world-cutting dismantle, the same technique that he used to kill Gojo. But afterwards, Maki, out of nowhere, came through the domain and stabbed Sukuna in the back with the soul-splitting katana. And coming into this chapter, we're seeing moments before that had happened, where we're seeing Ino and Kusakabe outside of the actual domain itself that Sukuna and Akotu and Yuji are fighting inside of. And they note that the domain, like the black sphere, has physically moved its location from where they originally started the fight. And this is because they needed to be right where they are so that Maki could sneak up on Sukuna. But I think it's just more than just Maki being there. I think it's more so around the soul-splitting katana being in that location, because Sukuna later on in this chapter points out that he realizes that Maki can move in and out of domains essentially invisibly because she has no cursed energy. Therefore, the domain can't register her. Because she has heavenly restriction, which reduces your cursed energy to 0, the same thing that Toji had. And then he also says, as for the cursed tool, the soul-splitting katana, I'm sure they placed it within the domain beforehand. Now, that's a little hard to decipher. I don't know if they physically did that, but it just makes me think that they moved the domain to this location so that the soul-splitting katana could be there, because it itself has cursed energy. Therefore, Sukuna would have been able to pick up on it. Now, as for Maki being able to perfectly hit Sukuna at this moment, well, it was because they were waiting for Sukuna's guard to be at its lowest, because Akotu was going to give them the signal for this, and the signal was breaking his own domain. Because he essentially almost, in a way, took the world-cutting dismantle so that he could drop the domain, and at that moment, Sukuna got hit by Maki, because he was essentially just paying attention to the domain breaking, which could have been confused for Akotu dying. But the domain breaking gave Maki the signal. She came in, cut him with the sword in the back. Now, we're coming back to real time, where we're seeing the aftermath of Akotu getting hit with the world-cutting dismantle, and I thought this was probably the end for Akotu, because if it killed Gojo, then surely it's going to kill him. But Rika is able to grab him quickly afterwards, and then Yui comes in and then takes Akotu and then teleports away, because that's Yui's technique. He can teleport. And we found out before that he has been doing this with all of the wounded, or all of the grievously wounded in this battle so far. We saw him take Higuruma after he got cut up by Sukuna, and after that Sukuna also pointed out that he took Gojo's body. So now, off the top of my head, Yui has recovered Akotu, Higuruma, and Gojo. Now, what's going on with them? We still don't know. I'm assuming he's taking them to Shoko and Uruhime, possibly, or at least I hope so. And then there's some kind of binding vows going down, some kind of chants being said, some kind of jujutsu cookery going on that's bringing them back from death, or close to death. More so for Akotu and Higuruma. Not really sure about Gojo, because he was straight up cut in half. And then, ostensibly killed, but, I'm not going to wax on too much about Gojo coming back. Like I've always been saying, it's 50-50 at this point, so just don't hold your breath. So now we're coming to Sukuna taking on Maki, and he realizes that the wound that he took from getting stabbed by Maki is healing slower than any of the other wounds. And that's because the narration tells us that if the split soul katana is wielded by an individual capable of perceiving the soul, the wound imparted by them cannot ordinarily be healed by use of reverse curse technique. Or, for one, would need to be aware of the outline of their own soul in order to do so. So, Sukuna, of course, is aware of the outline of his own soul. So, in theory, he will be able to heal this eventually, but due to the after effects of his battle with Gojo, he was unable to fully treat his wound via reverse curse technique. So, in order to compensate for that, he's manually beating his own heart with cursed energy, keeping himself alive, which is wild. But even after that, Sukuna says that he's still not even breaking a sweat, which we'll get into. Sukuna just not trying this whole time somehow, which is, very gege, but, like I said, we'll talk about it. But going back to seeing the outline of the soul, Maki is able to do this because of her full heavenly restriction power-up that she got earlier on in this arc, like around 50 chapters ago or something like that. And I'll get more into that too, because Maki's visual prowess comes up again. But we're cutting over to Yuji for a little bit, and he's like running back to the battle because remember, he broke out of the domain as well and also got hit by that world-cutting dismantle, and he healed himself. But on his way, he's saying, Fushiguro, I'm not giving up on you, because, that's still a whole thing. They need to save Megumi because his soul is still trapped within the body that Sukuna is inhabiting. But before Yuji can get there, he like falls over and starts coughing up blood. And he's like, what's happening? I know exactly what this is. The fact that I learned reverse curse technique, I've eaten 4 attacks that would have killed me. Something in my body hasn't completely healed. So yeah, Yuji is still rough around the edges. Him learning reverse curse technique in a month, I have issues with that, but at least Gege is like showing some drawbacks to it. He's not like a master despite him learning it in a month when there's plenty of characters who still don't know it, but that is what it is. But after this, Choso comes in and he's like, take a breath, remember what you were taught, visualize it, allow the blood to spread throughout every corner of your body like roots, visualize an outline of your body made with your veins. So first of all, Choso is alive. We were a little worried about this because Sukuna like stabbed him through the abdomen and kind of just left him there. And we were like, oh man, is this where Choso dies? But no, he survived, I guess, using his own fundamental that he's telling to Yuji here. And also him saying, remember what you were taught, saying allow the blood to spread throughout every corner of your body like roots. I guess this goes back to the 1 month time skip. And this is how Yuji has been using like blood manipulation, because we saw before that he was able to like shoot a piercing blood at Sukuna, and he also spit up blood on his face and allowed that to like explode on him. So Choso did teach Yuji how to use blood manipulation to some extent, even though it's not like his inherent ability. But Yuji does still come from blood manipulation users because, Kenjaku inhabited the body of Noritoshi Kamo back in the day when he made the Cursed Womb Death paintings that Choso is. But then, later on, he also inhabited the body of Kaori, who is Yuji's mother, and gave birth to Yuji while he was inhabiting her body. So I guess there's some kind of jujitsu trickle-down stuff going on here. Unless anyone can just learn blood manipulation through cursed spirit manipulation. I don't know. It's not explained. Who knows if it ever will be. But Yuji is for sure going to use this blood manipulation fundamental in combination with his reverse curse technique to further heal himself. Like, I guess this is essential to him being able to survive against Sukuna, because he's going to keep taking these grievous wounds from him for sure. So reverse curse technique just isn't enough here. He needs to manipulate his own blood along with that in order to fully heal himself. So this is like part of Yuji's mid-fight power-up, or realization, I suppose you could say. But we're coming back to Sukuna taking on Maki, and we go through a pretty cool fight sequence where they're, taking stabs at each other and jumping around and stuff, and Maki's tossing Sukuna over with a kind of like a judo move with the sword almost. And Sukuna eventually just cleaves the whole bridge that they're on. And this allows him to fire off seemingly a world-cutting dismantle at her, because he gives off the chant twin meteors. And Maki's just looking right at him and she avoids it, which is wild because Sukuna says she can see my technique much better than the other sorcerers, just like my fight with Maharaga and Shibuya. So, first of all, this killed Gojo, right? Gojo with the friggin' 6 eyes. So Maki... with her heavenly restriction, was able to see this attack coming at her better than Gojo. At least on paper, right? That's what's being said here. But anyway, let's go back to how Maki got this whole full heavenly restriction power up, along with her being able to see things better, because she was fighting against Cursed Naoya like way back in the 190s. And then in chapter 196, After the sumo guy and the samurai reincarnated sorcerer showed up, they both gave her a little bit of training just during the fight with Curse Naoya. You know, nothing big. This is definitely one of the biggest signs of Gege's Bleach influence, because this is one of Kubo's biggest storytelling devices in Bleach. Just mid-fight, mid-arc, just training shoehorned in, and then you get this crazy power-up that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten. And the sumo guy starts training Maki by pulling her inside of his sumo domain. And through just a bunch of sumo matches, I think they do over 1,000, he teaches her that at the moment of impact, everything that led up to entering the ring flows into the combatant. It's like smelling light or seeing sound. You sense everything about your opponent and yourself, and then the body before your eyes, and even victory and defeat themselves become meaningless. In other words, freedom. Now you'll just have to experience it for yourself. And then Maki just, instantly figures it out and defeats Sumo Guy, breaks out of the domain, and then she's just, of course, able to overcome Curse Naoya's speed. And she points out that the atmosphere around us may seem empty, but differences in temperature and air density create scattered surfaces. I just need to seize them. So the long and the short of it is this how she was able to avoid the world-cutting dismantle from Sukuna, because she just can. But first, let's talk about the sponsor of this video, Tokyo Treat. Tokyo Treat is a monthly pop Japanese snack subscription box where you'll get up to 20 of the latest, most exclusive, limited edition, and seasonal flavored Japanese snacks that are only available in Japan for a limited time, like Sakura Pepsi, Japanese sake Kit Kats, ramen, and many more. It also comes with this awesome booklet that gives you information on all of the snacks in the box, as well as information about Japan and its culture. Spring has arrived in Japan, and with it comes the much anticipated cherry blossom viewing season, known as Hanami. Experience the enchanting beauty of Japan's Sakura season with Tokyo Treat and Sakurako's special Sakura box. This month's boxes feature a beautifully designed Sakura theme, filled with many Sakura-inspired snacks and teas. And this month's theme is Sakura Snacktastic. It features snacks like Spring Cracker, Sakura Castella Cake, Sakura Shortbread Cookie, Sakura Leaf Cracker, Sakura Mini Cookies, and many more. So first I had to try this Hankata Tonkatsu ramen. It's a creamy and rich bone broth inspired ramen, and it's beyond flavorful. Like, so much umami in this. I also tried the pure potato honey butter and rock salt chips. These were incredible. I never had any kind of chips like this. It's like the perfect blend of sweet and salty. Also had to try these Pie No Mi mini pies, which are pear tarts. They're incredible. They're actually addicting. They have that buttery crust, but then they have that sweet pear white chocolate filling. Also had to try this Sakura Castella cake. So fluffy and moist. It has that amazing Sakura flavor to it. Also had to check out this Masuya cider. It's clear and it has a light and sweet flavor, and it's like a perfect pairing with all of the Sakura flavored snacks in this box. And of course, the special Japanese Kit Kats that we always get with Tokyo Treat this month are the matcha latte Kit Kats. This is like the perfect candy. Like, they always knock it out of the park with these Kit Kats. So guys, if you're looking to get an amazing Tokyo Treat box this month for you or your loved one, it also makes a great gift. Check the link in the description, and also make sure you use code Zhoniin for $5 off your box. Thanks, guys. Now, also, another thing that I want to point out is that this domain that the sumo guy, I'm sorry, I keep calling him sumo guy, Mio is his name. The domain that Mio pulled Maki inside of to train her, it said that as a result of a binding vow being removed, the time flows faster in Mio's barrier. The time it takes for over 1,000 bouts inside the domain is less than 1 minute outside the barrier. So that explains, the speed run of the training, which is also something that happened in Bleach. I hate to keep harping on it and going back to it. That's how Ichigo was able to learn the final Getsuga Tensho, at the end of the Aizen arc. But it makes me think, like, was this used during the 1 month time skip? Because we haven't seen Mio, I don't think, since this fight with Curse Naoya ended, right? And I don't think he just left, or I don't think Kenjaku killed these guys, because we would have seen it, right? Maybe we did see Mio after it. I don't really remember, to be honest. Let me know in the comments if Mio shows up after the Curse Naoya fight, but it's possible that during that 1 month time skip, Mio was just having everyone just just run training programs with him. Like, hey, you come inside my domain now, and we'll do 1,000 bouts in a minute. And then you come in, and we'll do 1,000 bouts in a minute. And maybe this is how Yuji learned reverse curse technique so fast. And everybody improved their cursed energy as well, and their reinforcement and all that stuff. Not really sure, just speculating, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's eventually revealed. Anyway, back to the fight. Maki realizes that Sukuna has been manually pumping his own heart with cursed energy, which is wild. And she's like, you going to keep that up while fighting me? And Sukuna's like, I don't see why not. I've hardly broken a sweat. And that's pretty wild because, like, man, Sukuna has been fighting, like, really hard. On the surface, it seems like for the last, 30 chapters or something. I don't know, around there, since the Gojo fight has started. And he's taken so many wounds, been beaten up so many times, taken Jacob's ladder, and he's hardly broken a sweat. So I don't know if this is just cap or it is the truth. But considering what happens at the end of the chapter, it probably is the truth. And we'll get into that because we're cutting away from this battle once again, and we're going over to Hikari fighting against Urarame. They've been fighting a lot off panel, just the side expository gang we have here. Like, whenever we need more exposition that the current characters in the main fight can't give, we cut over to Hikari and Urarame, and then they will be the ones to give it to us. So Urarame has just been launching all of these ice attacks because she has some kind of ice manipulation curse technique, and the fight seems to be somewhat even. But Hikari's like, Sukuna's presence is sure easy to read because, he's such a beast. And he's like, at first I thought we were going to get destroyed when I saw his four-armed form, but you know what? We're really doing this. His cursed energy is like taking a nosedive. So basically what I'm saying is we're going to defeat him because him just sensing it, like a Dragon Ball Z character, he can see that, they're eventually going to win considering how his cursed energy is declining. But Urarame is like, yeah, right. You don't even understand how Sukuna works. If he's not really that interested in his opponent, well, his cursed energy kind of reflects that. And then she eventually says that the strongest person that he's fought so far is Gojo, and that you guys couldn't put anyone out stronger than him, and that you should be ashamed of it. And she's like, even bearing in mind the effects of the first battle, it's clear that Sukuna has yet to go all out. So, even going against Gojo, Sukuna has yet to go all out. And that's where the chapter ends, with the narration saying, the fever of this battle knows no bounds. And the fever is in quotations. And we see Sukuna, like, shadowed with his eyes like glowing and drifting. So we've been talking about this since he was fighting Gojo, and him going all out, I thought eventually just meant that he was going to use Fuga, or his fire arrow that he used against Maharaga. And he does mention Maharaga in this chapter earlier when he's talking to Maki. Her being able to perceive his attacks, reminds him of Maharaga. So he hasn't really used it since then, right? So it seems like that is the next logical step here. He's going to use his black box open ability, whatever that is, and then pull the Fuga, the fire arrow out of it, and then start firing that thing off, which is like, one of the strongest things we've ever seen in the series. And it's understandable if he has to start using this against Maki, but I don't think it's all just that. It seems like there will be more to it. Like, I'm sure Sukuna has some kind of binding vow on himself that allows him to do things that he otherwise wouldn't be able to do, or there's some kind of restriction that he's putting on himself possibly, or maybe there's another thing that he can do to fully manifest himself that he hasn't already done before. Because remember when he was inhabiting Megumi's body, just out of nowhere he was like, all right, now I'm just going to assume my full form, and he did. Also, there's the whole prospect of his 20th finger still out there because Rika used it in some way to gain his curse technique, or at least to be able to use cleave so that a Kotsu could. And I don't think the finger was destroyed because I don't know if you can destroy the finger outside of maybe hitting it with Jacob's ladder, because Gojo says that it can't be destroyed in the very beginning of the series, and I don't think Rika eating it is capable of destroying it. That would be insane. So I assume that if the last finger doesn't come into play here, then that means that Sukuna is still capable of bringing out more of his potential here, because it's obviously saying Sukuna has yet to go all out. So aside from him just using the fire arrow or some kind of chance possibly that he hasn't used yet, the chance always come into play here and just make you do something that you otherwise wouldn't be able to, or he's just has another power-up form, or he's just going demon mode. Just full power Sukuna we have yet to see, like I said, which has been the whole time. So he probably has more than just the fire arrow, because we still don't even know what his curse technique is, right? Because his curse technique is, as far as I know, labeled as Shrine. Shrine is like a cabinet or a closet that you put things like holy objects or stuff like that. And it could refer to what his abilities are. You know, cleave, dismantle, like 2 types of swords. We got the Fuga, the fire arrow. We still haven't seen his friggin' staff thing, his trident staff thing that he has. So that's got to come into play. So I would just like at least his curse technique to be revealed, and then maybe he starts using aspects of it that we haven't seen yet. Maybe that's why Sukuna hasn't been going all out, because he's just been restricting himself to using cleave and dismantle. You know, that's always an aspect there, and once he starts using more abilities, then everybody's going to start getting wrecked if they haven't already been already. And then it's like, how do you defeat Sukuna? I don't know, because they've already done all the soul stuff. So I guess it's going to come down to Yuji having his Ichigo moment where he just suddenly becomes as strong as he needs to in order to defeat Sukuna. But, you know, also we can't forget that Yuji can seemingly swap souls with a person, right? He did it with Kusakabe during that time skip, and that still hasn't come back into play yet. So he's going to do that with Sukuna at some point. And I guess that's how they ultimately defeat him. Maybe he like swaps with Sukuna, saving Megumi, and then he's like, everyone kill me. Just kill me while I have Sukuna. And then Yuji dies, sacrificing himself, but also taking out Sukuna at the same time. Actually, that might be what happens. I mean, I hope not, but man, that could also coincide with what happens in the first chapter, or around the first chapter. I forget when Yuji says it, but he just says that he wants to die surrounded by loved ones or friends. And that could be it. He forcibly takes over Sukuna, or puts Sukuna back in himself, and then just has everyone kill him. And then that is the way it ends. I guess we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll have to make a separate video dedicated to that theory to really flesh it out. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. And of course, please, if you haven't already, follow me on TikTok or Instagram, whichever platform you prefer. Trying to get to 10,000 followers on there, guys. I would really appreciate it if you could help me out with that. And have a great day. See you in the next one.